Viewers, you are welcome to Eyewitness, a weekly program that takes a different look at the nature of Nigerians. Rather than focus on Nigerians who are corrupt, who are engaged in self-service, and whose life outlook is only around themselves, we discuss with Nigerians who have contributed massively to community service, to public service, to the public interest, to tell a different story, that not all Nigerians are centered on themselves. There are very many Nigerians who are committed to wider service to community and to nation. I'm Jibrin Ibrahim, and this week we are looking at Bring Back Our Girls, a famous phrase that reverberated not just in Nigeria, but all over the world. The story of the Chibok girls, but as you shall discover, it's much more than the story of the Chibok girls. We have one of the greatest advocates of the BBOG with us. She's called Maureen Kabrik. Yeah, welcome, Maureen.
Thank you so much for having me, Uncle Joe. I call him Uncle Chibok, so I know I'll be saying that a lot on the show.
Fine.
Yes.
It's so good to see you. We were on the barricades for so many years.
I know.
And until I retired, as you are aware, from active life and taking an easy time in my retirement. And I think there's a sense in which Bring Back Our Girls is one of the biggest stories about Nigeria, about advocacy, and about, as we like to say, the humanity in all of us. But before we start talking about Bring Back Our Girls, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? Primary school? Tell us about yourself. Let's get to know you.
Thank you so much, Uncle Jibo. So as he had introduced me on the show, my name is Maureen Kabrik. I always say I'm a Nigerian, but I grew up in Kaduna, born and brought up in Kaduna. I did my primary school also in Kaduna, Kaduna Capital School to be precise. That's where I went to. Then I proceeded to Federal Government Girls College Onitsha, where I graduated in 1993. And then I proceeded to Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, where I studied business admin and I specialized in marketing. I graduated in the year 2000. And I did my NYSC at Bauchi. And I served with Inland Bank. Then it was Inland Bank in Bauchi, 2001. And then after my youth service, I got a job with a private company in Abuja. So I relocated from Kaduna to Abuja, and I worked there for like 4 years. Then I resigned after, and I started my own business. And I tried to do the same business. It was a luxury goods company, but it was very capital intensive. So, and I didn't have the means and the resources to carry on with that business. So I decided to now, I got this business partner that I had then, and we started a smoothie business, and it was just something that was like new to the market in the country at the time in 2005. So we started the business together. We went to Lagos, but then the relationship fell apart, and then I came back to Abuja, and I carried on with the business, and that's exactly what I still do. So I always say I'm a fruiterer or a grocer. So we're all into fruits, vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables, smoothies, juices, and we have our business situated at Grand Square Supermarket, where we operate from till this very date.
Looking back at your youth, your early days in Kaduna, it's not the same city, is it? It has changed remarkably. How has it changed?
Just to even use our family as an example, We were born and brought up in Ungwerimi, to be precise. We lived right opposite the police station in Ungwerimi. So even growing up in Kaduna at that time, living to live close next door to a police station, we had this, full sense of security that we could even go to bed and our gates would be open. We were never afraid of any harm coming our way, even during the crisis as far back as the 80s. I remember as a young child, when there's crisis in Kaduna, people would normally run and come stay in our house due to the fact that we were living opposite the police station, and they believed that they will be safe, they will be secured, and it was always the case at that time growing up. Then fast forward to when the crises were getting hotter and hotter, going into the early 2000s, and it became almost impossible for us to find ourselves in the situation where we had always lived and known, and which is that, being each other's, good neighbors, looking out for each other, brother's keeper. We went to school not knowing who was a Muslim, who was a Christian, what language you speak. We went, we mixed with everybody, children of the rich, children of the poor. We all grew up together. During Salah, we all dressed up, and we're always looking forward to the food that neighbors will bring. Same thing Christmas, with the neighbors too. There was no difference, in growing up. We didn't know we were not taught anything else aside from loving each other. And that was the environment I grew up in. But unfortunately, years down the line, I remember when I got the call from my dad and mom, and they were saying we have to make the move from Ungwerimi to southern Kaduna area. And the reason wasn't far-fetched. And what was this reason? Because a lot of our neighbors who were Christians at that time had all sold their houses and moved to the southern part of Kaduna because they felt that they were no longer safe living in that environment. It was something that broke our hearts as the kids, and we couldn't stop our parents because we all had grown up and had left home. So we're like, okay, if we say no to this proposition, we are not there with them. We don't know what they are constantly having to face. But it broke our hearts in so many ways because we couldn't believe that a day would come that we would no longer feel safe in the environment we grew up in, that we would look at our neighbors and see our neighbors as people who are capable of harming us, not because we did anything wrong, but because we are Christians. And I still don't understand it, how, a place I grew up in for more than 30, 40 years, a neighbor would just see me, and because of the virtue of the faith I practice, and that's already just makes me an enemy. So it was something that I never comprehended, and I still don't, because I don't understand why that should translate to me being marked as, okay, if anything goes wrong, for just that faith that I profess, I'll be murdered. So our parents had to take that painful decision to sell the house and move back to Kaduna South, where we now have our family house. So that is to answer the question of, this is me now relating even my personal experience with what Kaduna has become. Kaduna has become a shadow of itself. We are no longer safe. We are deeply divided, along religious and tribal lines. It is something that hurts deeply. I have a big sister who is married to a Muslim. She was in Abuja some days ago, and she just left back to Kaduna. I don't love her less because she got married to a Muslim and she converted. She has 2 boys, Mohammed and Bello. They come to Abuja to holiday with us. I have a praying mat in my house when Muslims come, once they know the direction to pray. So I don't see any differences in who we are and what we represent, but that we wake up today and in a place like Kaduna, we can no longer look at each other and feel safe. We can no longer look at each other and be friends. It hurts. The last time I was in Kaduna, we decided to go back to Ungwerimi with my siblings to pay the neighbors a visit, since we haven't been there in so many years. And I remember with nostalgia, when we went back there, areas we could remember, things we could remember. We went to the market and they were so happy to see us. And a lot of them opened up to say, the Babam Kuyache, sorry, I'm going to try, for some of them saying in Hausa, when your father said he was leaving this place, we were hurt because we knew why that was happening. And for a lot of them, they tried to dissuade him, but there was just something about it that made him to still feel insecure by leaving there. And one of the houses we went to, I remember Mama Musa saying, since you guys left, nobody gives us Christmas food again. And we told her, it's the same for us where we are now. Salah comes and just goes. We don't get this Salah food to eat. This is food that we always look forward to. We won't cook for almost a week, and now we're in a place where all of us are all sharing the same faith, tribe and stuff. And so there's no fun and joy in that. The joy is in, you know, the differences we have. That's where the joy should come from, in learning about each other, our culture, the faith we all profess. But Kaduna is a shadow of itself now. Yes.
Let me confess, when we were in secondary school in Zaria, we didn't like people who went to capital school because they were elite, they were spoiled, they read cartoons, and they had all this elite air about them. Is that your history?
No, that's not my history, but you know, it rubbed off on us, you know. So, and this is what has, you know, made the educational system we have now to be such an unfortunate one. Because for children like us that came from like the average home, not from the rich home, not from the elite home as you're talking about, we had the opportunity of mixing up with the children of the rich. And, you know, we learned a thing or two from them. And that gave us this pedestal that we are all standing on now, because we were able to compete not just from where we come from, but you know, by the intellect and the knowledge that we all brought to our various classes. So we had that, and we were able, we go to each other's houses, you know. Yeah, like for me, they're going to some of my friends' houses that already had like videos and all the satellite dishes. It was something that I used to like, you know, would be like, wow, because we just had a black and white TV at home watching NTA when it comes on at 4. But those were the things we were exposed to. Even though we didn't have it, we had friends who had access to it. So we would learn also just at the same pace that they too were learning and exposed to. So we had that advantage, but we're sorry, you know, we're not going to apologize for being ex-students of Kaduna Capital.
That's fine. You have no responsibility for the primary school you went into. But final issue about your background.
Yes.
Going to the South for secondary school, what did you remember from that?
So many things, so many things, so many things. And if we're to go into that, honestly, I don't think you will have the time to even ask me all the other questions you want to. But briefly, let me just say, it was quite an experience for me, because I left home at age 11. And at every opportunity I have, I quickly shared this story with people. And I said, when my admission letter came, I was already in first time JS1 in Capital School. And my father insisted that he was going to pull me out of Capital School, and I must go to Federal Government Girls College. I resisted, because it's a place that I have never gone out of Kaduna. My mother too resisted, you know, she did everything she could to dissuade my father from sending me from Kaduna all the way to Onitsha, a place they don't even know anything. He has never been there. She has never been there. Her little daughter, how am I going to cope? How am I going to survive? So, but we did all we could. My father said no. So second term came, and my father took me on the first journey to school. You know, it was quite an experience, stopping over at Lokoja, seeing Abuja Road then that was being constructed, you know, and then stopping over at Lokoja to eat, you know, with other passengers and everything. And finally, you know, getting to Onitsha, where we got to school, did my registration, and then the hardest moment came where he had to turn his back and leave, you know. There were no phones, nothing, you know, and the only way we could always communicate back home was by writing letters, you know, and then you write and you pray that the person that you addressed it to will get it, and then you get a feedback from home. But my biggest lesson and takeaway then was how safe Nigeria really was, of how much there was this deliberate effort by the states, the nation states, you know, to integrate us even from a young age. For us too, because there were people too from the South that were taken to other parts of Nigeria to go to school. So it was a deliberate attempt, you know, to get us to know more about each other, to understand our differences, and to accept ourselves the way we are. And the deepest lesson I took away is how I used to go to school. I always tell people that I met a Nigeria that walked a little bit before it, you know, became what it is today. And I remember there was that came from the north. There was a train service system then that was in operation. So we that came from the north, we had different coaches, different schools from FGC, Port Harcourt, Owerri, Onitsha, Enugu. So we, the students that came from the north, the school bus takes us to the train station. There was no train station in Onitsha, so they had to take us to Enugu. So we had coaches. By the time we get there, you see your school's, this name of your school, and they take you in. We had tickets that were sold at a discounted price, you know, and within 24 hours, you're home. You know, we get served on the train, you know, being students. Then in going to school, before we started using the train system, and this for me was what I know today we have lost. I remember my father would drive from home. We were living in Ongwarimi, and then he'll go to television in Kaduna, where the motor park is. We had the Kennedy Lichukus at that time, we facing our cheese, all those luxurious buses. Because my father took me to school only once, and all the other times I had to find my way to school. He takes me to the motor park. He hands me over to the driver. A driver he doesn't know. He has no idea where this driver lives, nothing. They buy my ticket, they put me in the bus. They give me money, school allowance, pocket money, and then give me money to eat food on the road, because we're definitely going to make 2 stops before we get to Onitsha. And he will give the bus driver money again to say, when you get to Onitsha, please put my daughter in a taxi that will take her to 33 Junction in Sube, where our permanent site was. And that is exactly what will happen. My father will go back home knowing fully well that who he entrusted me and that person's care would indeed take me to school, and I will be safe. They had nothing to worry about. And they won't hear from me until they receive that letter that states, I have gotten to school safely. How are you all doing? And then I also get a response from them weeks after. Who can dare that in today's Nigeria?
Nigeria has changed. So let's go to our topic of the day, bring back our girls.
Yes.
How did it start?
I wasn't around when Bring Back Our Girls started. I was in the UK with my sister. She had just graduated from London School of Business. So we went for her graduation. But I was around when the girls were kidnapped. We were in Nigeria when the girls were kidnapped, because it was shortly after the Nyanya bomb blast that the abduction happened. But we traveled shortly after the abduction for her graduation. So I just came online because I had just joined Twitter. I didn't know much about Twitter. I have never been on Facebook even, so, but with the happenings at that time, and I kept hearing people talk about my sister is more tech savvy than I am. And they keep going on about this space called Twitter. So sometimes I'll ask her what's happening there. So she would tell me, and she said, okay, bring your phone. So she downloaded the app, and signed me on and taught me how to use Twitter, So we were on the streets one day in London, and then I saw that there was a march. I've always been so politically aware, because my late father was into politics, and I was so close to him, and so I was picking up things around, the political space growing up. So I always would debate with people. I always would have something to say, in conversations around politics. So I had an interest, and also an interest in what good governance should be like. So when I saw that there was a protest in Abuja, I was so excited. I said, there's something happening. People are out on the streets, they are protesting. So I made all the noise with my sister. I told her, she was like, you've started already. I said, I can't wait to get back to Nigeria. I don't know what this is all about, but I'm ready to be a part of this movement, because all it needed for me was to put myself in the shoes of the Chibok girls, who was in faraway Onitsha at age 11. And I imagined that I could just be sleeping in school, and then I get abducted. What will my poor parents do? So for me, that was all it took for me to just align myself with whatever it was that was happening home back in Nigeria, in Abuja. I did placards even while we were in London, because I saw people carrying placards, bring back our girls back home. So I also did my own placards. Everywhere we're going to, I'll bring it out, and just show it up. So people would ask questions, and I'll tell them, and then you see people to come join, carry placards. So I even started my own Bring Back Our Girls way back in London before we came back to Nigeria. We came back 7 days after the movement had started. And as soon as we dropped our things, I knew that the next place I was going to go to was the Unity Fountain. So that was exactly what happened. And I joined, I should think it was May 5th or 7th. And I think the movement started about April 30th or so, thereabout. So the minute I came back and I joined the movement with my younger sister, I never looked back. I didn't need anyone to tell me to come and be a part of the movement. I knew it was a noble movement. I knew it was time something like that happened. And I joined the movement, and I gave it my all, and I still do.
Before that abduction, there have been many attacks on people, including women, students. Why was it that that particular one galvanized people to reaction? I
should think it was the aloofness of the government of the day at that time, the disdain in which the issue around insecurity was being handled. Because before then there was Buniyadi, there was Potiskum, there was Goza. There were, pockets of so many of, just as you rightly mentioned, of all this dastardly acts being carried out by the terrorists. And they were being emboldened by the silence of the government. Then Nyanya happened, and then the next day they went partying in Kano, dancing on stage. When Buniyadi happened, I remember there was this ceremony they had that they gave out something. There was something that's happened in it was International Conference Center, and a lot of all the past leaders, the current administration, the administration at that time hosted a big party. I can't remember what that event was, but it was something that just showed that they really didn't care. So when Chibok happened, Chibok was huge because now it was the numbers again that were involved. 276 schoolgirls were in school, 276. These are not chickens. These are not goats. Human beings. We've been seeing, gory pictures of kids being slaughtered in school. Government was doing nothing. And then there was again another silence from the then administration of ex-President Goodluck Jonathan. And it was like business as usual for them, carrying on with their politicking and not giving a damn. And I should think it sparked off something in citizens who decided, look, our silence will cost us. So the earlier we all come together and do something, the better for us all as a nation. Because injustice to one is injustice to all. So I think the numbers that were involved in this abduction was what shook the nation, even though the government of the day ignored it and was pretending that all was well. But with citizens, all wasn't well, and it was time to speak up. So I guess that was what gave Bring Back Our Girls that stage that they decided to come on and say, look, you know what, we can no longer be silent, because it took the movement to come out and begin to protest daily. I believe you were part of the early people who came.
I was there from day one.
Absolutely, from day one. Before even the day one, you had already, you had formed a group of like minds that said, no, this can't go on, because there comes a time where people indeed would wake up and say, enough is enough. And for you and all the other people, citizens, who were moved by that, felt it was time to say something. Silence was no longer going to be golden. I grew up watching you two on TV. I grew up hearing you speak. I grew up hearing you speak about democracy. I grew up seeing you fight, military. So when I even saw the makeup, the lineup of the people who were at the forefront at that time, it made me believe that, okay, indeed it was time for something like that. So I guess for all of you too, you felt it was time that you could no longer be silent, and you all came together and you birthed Bring Back Our Girls movement. And today, the society is better for it, because citizens now know that silence is no longer golden.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Viewers, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
That's great. It's good to see you.
Welcome back, viewers, to our conversation with Maureen Kubrick on Bring Back Our Girls. I think there's a sense in which her life has been an illustration of the Nigerian problematic. a country in peace, in unity, where neighbors related well, to one in which today it's conflict, it's violence, and increasingly we are turning the country along apartheid lines, this time determined largely by ethnicity and religion. Our topic today, bring back our girls. Maureen, one of the things that surprised not just Nigerians but the world is the speed with which Bring Back Our Girls became a huge international story. And that must have taken exceptionally good advocacy skills. What were those skills that were deployed to make it such a big story in the world?
I should think first and foremost, it would, let me say, the credibility of the front runners of the movement. You know, I have mentioned you, the likes of Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. You know, we had some very strong, you know, voices at that time. The likes of Hajia Saudatumadi. We had the likes of the Hajia Mariam Uwais. We had the Hadiza Bala Usmans. You know, we had the Aisha Yusufus. You know, so the lineup was quite an incredible one. You know, and the commitment also was something that wasn't lost on the international community, because I guess the minute the movement didn't go away after the first protests, when the move, I wasn't there when the decision was taken, but I learned that, you know, after the movements had their first protest to the National Assembly, a decision under the rain, and it rained heavily on that day. People were soaked, everything. And when the movement got to National Assembly, they ensured that the entire leadership of the Senate addressed them. So I guess it wasn't lost on the movement on that day, what they had achieved. And I should think also it was big news. It was also already big news on the international media, that school abduction. It was being talked about before even the movement was birthed. So I think there was already an interest from the international community. So when the movement started, and they stayed on the issue, and they stayed and had a singularity of purpose that we must stay on this matter. If we are ever going to make any progress, if we're ever going to get the lives of citizens to matter, irrespective of your status, this is the time. Though an unfortunate situation, but a golden moment had presented itself. And the movement stayed true to its core values. And that was something that was new to a whole lot of people. And I should think that made the entire world to begin to pay attention, to begin to want to know more about the movement and its insistence on not going away until all the girls are rescued.
How were you able to penetrate the media, both locally and internationally?
I should think also, I missed to add that now this, I'll make the point here. The strategic team, there was a strategic team, I remember, by the time we joined the movement, there was already a strategic team that we learned had been put in place, of which I later on became a part of. And it was amazing to see how, you know, the movement learned so many things as it was growing, because every day new ideas are being birthed, every day, because the movement needed to sustain itself. And in sustaining itself, you can't come and be doing the same thing every day. So I noticed that that strategic team at that time was saddled. You were a part of the strategic team also. So the strategies that were being churned out day in, day out, there was such a credible leadership for the movement that anytime that strategic team movement comes up with any idea or anything, they say, okay, we're putting this forward to the larger house. This is what we have come together to agree as a strategic team, and we're presenting it to the house. You know, the system of the movement was democratized. So it was easy to have all of the successes due to largely, you know, the trust that the membership of the movement entrusted in the hands of the strategic team members that played a critical role in the sustenance of the movement.
How did the movement influence your own life, your own skills?
You know, I never knew that I'm sitting down here to speak to you. a privilege and honor, which I never would have had were it not, first, let me say, my educational background, and second, for being a member of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. It is the movement that has given me, I lent my voice to the movement, and in lending my voice to the movement, it earned me today a chair to sit down with you. So those are some of the things that the movement has enabled me to be able to sit across, you know, great minds and discuss issues, because I have always, like I said, wanted to use my voice. I had always been a rebel, but a rebel with no cause. So Bring Back Our Girls gave me an opportunity to be a rebel with a cause. And the cause now was every life must matter. Every life. We must treat our citizens with dignity, irrespective of their status. Like we keep saying, if it were the children of the rich that were taken, Chibok would not have even happened. Bunyadi would have been where the minute Bunyadi happened, the government would have moved in and those terrorists would have been crushed. Let's assume it was the children of the rich that were slaughtered, 50-something of them in Bunyadi. Trust me, we wouldn't be sitting here even talking about terrorism. We would have been talking about something else, because they would have been dealt with severely. But we all know that when issues that bother around the poor in this country are being discussed, they are being discussed with disdain because they believe they don't matter. And so for people like me, the advocacy shaped my life in so many ways, because those things I had always wanted to do, to speak out against bad governance, because it's tough speaking out against bad governance. It affected us even business-wise. We had even friends. We have family members who disagreed with us by being members of the movement. They weren't happy that we were members. They felt we were fighting a government that we should be supporting, because, you know, already the religious divide already was being created at that point in time. So it was seen that if you, as a Christian, was even speaking up against a Goodluck Jonathan, you're committing an abomination. You know, it was now not seen as, this is about preservation of lives, including your life, who is defending an administration that was very inept at that time, that has failed a lot of people. Because you weren't a victim does not mean others were not victims. You not being a victim today does not shield you from being a victim tomorrow. So what we were doing was to ensure the safety of us all. So the advocacy put me in a positive and negative light at the same time. Our businesses suffered because people felt, oh wow, why should we patronize you because of the stance you have taken? Or why should I? We had people say, oh, a friend even threatened that, oh, okay, you know, someday if I even have the opportunity, I could just wipe out all of you people. Family members will look at you and be like, are you okay? Do you? You know, my father was in PDP at that time, and I knew how scared he was for my life and that of my sister. So I used to ask my late dad then, okay, so why are you scared, Dad? I said that if you believe in your party and you believe in the ideals of your party, and if you believe that your party has good people in it, then you shouldn't be afraid of us being taken out by the system. I said, you see, this is what happens. Our protests are everything. We don't come with guns. We only go with our voices. And in these voices, we speak the truth. And the truth is what a lot of people don't want to hear. So I used to tell my dad, then we'll be fine. You don't worry about us. I said, if your party had done the right thing, I won't be out on the streets making demands for anybody's rescue. So we had different times that it was good and it was bad. Yeah.
Okay, one criticism I've always had over the years on Bring Back Our Girls is why the focus on the Chibok girls. Yeah. That this is a phenomenon that was widespread at that time throughout the Northeast. Lots of other students and girls had been abducted. Apart from that, many had been captured, as it were, and forcibly married. And therefore, some people felt, rather than a focus on the Chibok girls, there should have been a more general focus. What would be your response to that?
We get that question thrown at us a lot, and I always tell people, even from the movement, it was made clear that the Chibok girls were the symbol of all that is wrong with the system. You can't go on an advocacy and not have a central theme of what your advocacy is going to be centered on. So Chibok girls were just a symbol. Chibok girls were the symbol for Buninyadi boys. Chibok girls were the symbol for Pottiscombe. Chibok girls were the symbol for all those who were displaced. Chibok girls were the symbol of all those who had died. Chibok girls were the symbol of our soldiers who were being killed at the war front, because they symbolized everything that had gone wrong with the system at that time. So we couldn't go out carrying placards or standing and talking about so many things all at the same time. You must have a focus. So we made them the focus of the bigger picture, because while advocating for Chibok girls, for several times you were a member of the movement. It wasn't only just Chibok girls, because we commemorated so many events at that Unity Fountain. We protested on behalf of our soldiers. We protested on behalf of displaced people. We protested on behalf of Nyanya victims. We protested on behalf of we had different days that we would take a theme. Okay, today our focus will be this, tomorrow. But Chibok girls was largely what the spotlight was on. But it didn't take away from the movement that ability that he had to stay on. Chibok BBOG protested for the policemen who were kidnapped. Chibok girls, BBOG protested for the NNPC team that went on an exploration in one of those places. And our advocacy ensured they were released. Chibok girls and BBOG protested on behalf of Saifura, the first lady humanitarian worker who was ever beheaded by the terrorists. Alice Ngada, so we had so many moments where we took on all of these issues, but it just wasn't something that we would write them out in bold letters and say, okay, these are all the people, but we had a central thing, which was Chibok girls. I used to tell people that I would say, okay, it's just like if you want to drink Fanta, sometimes you say, go and buy me Coke, but you're giving the person a Fanta bottle. So you want to go and buy a toothpaste. You're not saying, go get me, you say, go and buy me Maclean. Sometimes people don't, for close-up, even though it's close-up you want, or Pepsodent or Colgate, you just say, go get me Macleans. But what you're really trying to say is, I need a different type of Maclean. But the generic name that we grew up knowing is what we always generalize every other thing to be centered around. So I want rice. I may not specify the kind of rice, but there are different types of rice when you go to the market. So that's how I see the Chibok girls issue. Although they were the focus, but there were so many other issues that the Bring Back Our Girls handled. Yes.
Today, we have terrorism that has spread all over the country. It used to be focused on the three key states, Borno, Yobe, Adamawa. I think in a sense it has become a national phenomenon. So what's your feeling about that? That after all this struggle, every day the situation seems to get worse.
It's a disappointing feeling. Because without mincing words, there's no sincerity of purpose from this current administration. Because this current administration rode on the back of coming to fix, if nothing, the security problem of this. Even if they achieved nothing, the promise they made to Nigerians was that they were going to come and fix the security problem. Their major campaign focus. Now this is it, with the same thing with the Bring Back Our Girls when we meet Chibok girls, even though there were other issues. It's the same thing with APC. Their central message to Nigerians was we were coming to deal with the terrorism that was already rearing its ugly head. And we needed the Hydra monster to be dealt with by someone who Nigerians felt had what it takes to face a terrorist group that is giving, at that point, the then administration tagged them the fringes of Nigeria's sleepless nights. Because we were afraid that failure to deal with that fringes, when they are done with the fringes, the next line of attack will be you and I, who feel we have been surrounded by the fringes that will give us the cover. Unfortunately, they came in with so much pageantry and palmbre, here, there, and it's been a total disaster. since they assumed office, all the promises that were made. Oh, the war, whatever room is going to be relocated to the northeast. Oh, all the service chiefs are going to be working from the northeast. I'm going to lead from the front. You know, I'm going to do this. We saw nothing of that. So there are no surprises that today, this Hydra monster has grown in so many ways now that they have put us in the middle and have surrounded over 200 million Nigerians. We are now helpless because we can clearly see from the top to the bottom. There is no hope in sight that this current administration that is almost coming to the end of its term has anything to offer differently to citizens when it comes to the protecting of us, or the protection of us. It's like we are all at the mercies of whatever faith we believe in, because the ability, the political will to do what is right is lost on this administration. We had service chiefs that were in office for more than 4, 5, 6 years, I guess. They failed and failed woefully. However, they were rewarded with ambassadorial positions for a job that they clearly failed at. And today all we keep seeing is, oh, breaking news, the president is meeting with service chiefs. They come out from that, nothing. They go back, it's the same thing. It's attacks, attacks, attacks. I watched one of the abducted train passengers, one professor who spoke yesterday on Arise News, and all of them that have been coming out. You know, it's amazing. In less than 8 hours, he was already on TV speaking. The media already had access to him. And the question that just kept going through my head was, have the security forces even had access to them to even debrief them, to get some, you know, answers from them? You hear them say, no, they've not reached out to them. They've not contacted them. So how can you be fighting a war that you want to succeed at, and people are coming out from terrorist den with so much information, and you don't even have a system in place that first and foremost, because you can see, because the state plays no role, that's why when they are free, the first people you find there are their family members who are there to welcome them. And in other parts of the world, we see that the state takes you, you become, you know, you're first kept in the custody of the state, because there's so many things they would want you to first, you know, make you comfortable. You go through all the, you know, proper health checks and everything. Then they have people who will speak to you. Then they have people who would come with their pens and papers to want to take notes before you will be finally handed over. Yes, your family could still have access to you, but we don't see that happen here. So
maybe they are not interested.
You know, that's the thing. So they are not interested in knowing any of these details. They are not interested in fighting the war. It's all just for show. You know, all that when they come together and say, oh, the president has given marching orders how many times? And none of it has produced any fruitful result. So when is he going to stop giving these marching orders? When is he going to stop it and just get the job done? It's not about the orders. Since he came into power, it's been one order after the other, and those orders have not been carried out successfully. And that's all we keep getting. So for me, you know, as Aisha Yesufu would always say, you know, today's victims, today's survivors are tomorrow's victims, and who is next? That's the condition, that's the situation we're in, because there's terrorism in the south, southeast, southwest, northeast, the entire Nigeria. No one is spared, because these people now are well prepared. You hear what the professor yesterday said. They told them that there are moles. They've already sent out moles into different places. And when he came out, a lot of the things that he heard has happened on the outside. Some of them heard them discussing about it in the camps where they were kept. So that means, and I always tell people, I said, for every time the terrorists dared, for every time they threatened, they carried it out. For every time the president had threatened them, what has he carried out? They threaten
Nothing.
and carry out. He threatens and nothing gets done. So it's like a little child when you say, well, I'm going to slap you, I'm going to punish you. The more you don't do all of those things, he just takes your words to be. That's why they could have the guts to say, oh, we're going to go for the president next. And I want to believe they are not just speaking from a place of right. It's because they can clearly see that they have the capacity to do that.
Anyway, the elections are coming in a few months' time. Are you optimistic or pessimistic?
Very. I've always said I'm an incurable optimist. I always say Nigeria must work in my lifetime. Yesterday, I listened to one of those very young people that I love so much, Renu, you know, and she said something that she's giving herself a timeline, and she's no longer just saying Nigeria will work in her lifetime. She now says Nigeria will work in my lifetime within the next 1-2 years. She does, because her lifetime could be that, okay, if she's living till 50, 60, 70 years, what if it doesn't work when she's 50? What if it doesn't work? So now she wants to even give it a timeline by saying Nigeria must work within the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years. So I am an incurable optimist. And with what I see, with the awakening, nothing gives me joy, because we've been on this journey, you know, and most of the things we had always propagated, most of the things we had advocated for, we got so much abuses, we got so much insults, we got so much attacks because we said those things. It was almost as if, you know, when you say not making, to put ourselves on a certain pedestal, it was almost as if, but I just have to say, it's almost as if we were light years ahead of so many people, because some of all the things we had seen that can happen or could happen is happening. So when we speak in the language of the future, a lot of people would come and they call you names, they this, that. But today they're all speaking in that same language. So I'm happy to see that we had made this significant improvement. People can clearly see now how good or bad governance can affect their lives. They are making the connections. They are connecting the dots. They can see, oh no, we can no longer be sleeping dogs. We can no longer be the sleeping giants. We can no longer be silent. The youths are awakening. They are taking their destiny now into their hands, because the future belongs to them. The future is for them, and whatever they make of this future, like somebody said, told them, he said, look at yourself now. In the next 8 years, where do you want to be? In your calculation of where you want to be in the next 8 years, you must also put in that calculation the political class that you want, because there must be the political class that can deliver that type of future for you. And it is in your participation today that will deliver that next 8 years. Because if you are 19 today, in 8 years, you'll be 27. And if you get bad leadership, before you know it, you're in your 30s, and Nigeria is still not working. We've woken up today, some of us are now in our 40s. Nigeria is not working for us. In another 8 years, I'll be 50. That means I'll get to the same way people were crossing those lines and not seeing Nigeria works for them. If we're not mindful, that's what will keep happening. So I'm glad they have embraced this challenge now and are daring the two oldest structures that have kept us in this state with no progress at all. The young people have decided, because they've seen their contemporaries in other parts of the world do it. Even recently in Zambia, it happened where they were not given a chance, but they did push themselves. They believed, they dared. And that's all it takes, dare. And if they do dare all the way to February when the elections will hold, I believe a new Nigeria is going to be birthed, and I know it will happen. It's just about us being alive to witness that very fateful day.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Maureen.
Thank you so much.
Viewers, if you want to know the definition of a true advocate, of an effective advocate, of somebody who can make change happen, on somebody who can inspire others, your answer, Maureen Kabrik. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uncle Jibo, for having me. Thank you so much. I appreciate this moment. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.